It was a beautiful day today, huh?
Amen.
You guys all get outside?
Amen.
Some fresh air? It was an amazing day today. Well, I see there's a couple new faces in here tonight, so thank you for joining us, and we're going to continue on. Tonight's message has a special place in my heart, because as I was in Hollywood in Los Angeles, I wanted to be an actor so bad. I lived, breathed, slept. I studied everything that actors had to do. So, if you could, acting was my idol. So, the things that I talk about tonight are things that were very dear to me, and it's amazing how God in His mercy has opened my eyes and allowed me to see my folly. And I hope that I can speak God's words tonight. So let's bow our heads and ask God for a word. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for such a beautiful day, the sunshine coming out. Thank you so much for each and every person that showed up here tonight, Lord. I ask that you speak your words through me tonight. Open the ears and the hearts of each and every person. And Lord, I just praise your name for everything that you're doing here at Weimar. I want to ask a special blessing upon this place, upon each and every person, as I've had such a wonderful time fellowshipping with them up here. Lord, just bless this place. Bless this week of prayer. Amen. Amen. So as we kind of get started in tonight's message, I'd actually like to ask a question. Have you ever stopped to consider and think, why do we worship? Why? Why did God create inside of every single being that He's created this need and this desire to worship? You see, what is worship? Is there a right kind of worship? Is there a wrong kind of worship? How often do you hear people today say, well, I worship God in this way? Did God give us a specific way to worship Him? Yes. So how important is it to understand what worship is, and how important it is for us in this time as we're drawing near to the end of the world? Isn't this end war going to be about worship? In fact, didn't it start about worship? So as we look at Matthew 4:10, Jesus, speaking to Satan as he was trying to tempt him, said, "Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and Him only shalt thou serve." And of course, he was getting this from the first commandment. God is the only being that deserves our worship. The only one, coming from Christ's mouth Himself. And also in John 4:23 through 24, this is Jesus speaking to the woman at the well. "But the hour cometh, and now is, that when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship Him. God is a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth." So what this is telling me is there is a right way to worship God, in spirit and in truth. But what does it mean in spirit? In spirit. What is a spirit? If you just look at a definition of what a spirit is, that non-physical part of a person, which is the seat of your emotions, your character, or your soul. Last night we talked about your character. What is your character made up of? Your thoughts and your feelings. So right here, to worship God, you should worship Him with your thoughts and your feelings and in truth. So let's look at some ways that people thought they were worshiping God, but perhaps weren't. Cain and Abel here. Cain thought he was worshiping God. He actually wanted to worship God. It wasn't that he said, let's worship some other false god. He just said, I want to worship God in this way. God told him a specific order of how to sacrifice to them. And of course, what happened? God was displeased with him. he became angry with his brother and committed the first murder. If we look at the children of Israel, right when Moses went up into the mountain to get the 10 Commandments, and they couldn't even wait for 30 days. I mean, they had just heard the voice of God speaking all these things. And they said, you know what? We don't know where Moses is, so, we need to worship something, anything. I don't know, build something. So all of a sudden, they built this calf, worshipped it, and fell into an apostate state. Now, do you remember the story of Balaam and his donkey? Do you remember what was happening and going on right now? Why Balaam was going to visit the Israelites? Do you remember that whole story? He was going to curse them. But the Israelites were all on the river Jordan, and they were just about ready to cross over into the promised land. They'd gotten done with their wandering. They were sitting on the side of the river Jordan. Moses was preparing to occupy Canaan, so he was getting ready the troops, and they were there for a little bit of time. And all of the kings, the Midianite kings, saw the Israelites encamped on the other side of the Jordan. And they all became extremely fearful. They'd heard all the stories. They'd heard how God had led them out of Egypt. Now all of a sudden they know that they're coming into their land to take them. So the Midianite kings were so scared, that's how they called Balaam to come and curse them so that the Midianite kings would actually take them over. Now, if you remember, Balaam said, of course, I can't do anything that God doesn't want me to do. So he went out there to go and curse them, but he ended up blessing them 3 times. Well, the Midianite kings were so angry with him that they sent him back. And of course, Balaam, because he wanted the money that they were offering to him, came back to them and he said, you know what? I got a way. I got a way that you can defeat the Israelite army. And they said, okay, we're listening. And he said, if you get them to worship anything other than their God will be displeased with them and you will be able to have your way with them. So they thought, okay, this is a great idea. How do we do that? At Balaam's request, he said, start throwing some parties. Start throwing some parties, invite a few of the Israelites, send a few of your women into their camp, and before you know it, they'll witness how you guys worship your gods, and they will fall away from their God. And that's exactly what happened. They started sending in 1, 2, maybe 3 Israelite women at a time, until before they knew it, a lot of the Israelites were going to their parties, bowing down, worshiping to their idols, bringing them back into their camp. And by the time Moses realized what was going on, he had to make a decree. The decree came, you have to slay every single person that was involved in this false worship. Can you imagine? Your brothers, your sisters, these people that you've been traveling around in. And they fell to a huge apostate state, and lots of people lost their lives. Oh, that's my little picture of the promised land there. So a warning of worship was issued. And after they have been destroyed before you, be not careful to be ensnared by inquiring about their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? We will do the same. You must not worship the Lord your God in their way, because in worshiping their gods they do all kinds of detestable things. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire as sacrifices to their gods. So they were told, don't even look at the way that they worship. Don't even open up your eyes to it. Otherwise, you might fall prey to worshiping their gods. And perhaps one of the most infamous, I guess you could say, systems of false worship that were set up was Nebuchadnezzar's golden idol. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, of course, standing up there for God. Always fascinates me about this story. How, can you imagine all those people bowing down and you are the only 3 standing up for your God? It's amazing. Amazing. And this story has huge, significant implications to us today. These false systems of worship that are set up today. You see, Nebuchadnezzar got his idea for this idol from his dream, right? The dream saying that your kingdom will not stand forever. So what does Nebuchadnezzar do? He builds his golden idol to basically say, no, 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 the whole thing's going to be gold the whole time. Our kingdom will never fall. And in fact, that's, I think, why the artists always portray him with his arms crossed. It's kind of an arrogant pose, if you will. Well, you know, we have a lot of false systems of worship set up today. And in fact, we have a false system of worship set up today that has such striking similarities to this story. Does anybody know what this is? Interesting. There's a golden idol. A big golden idol. The Oscars. Better known as the Academy Awards. That's funny. It kind of has that same golden, arrogant pose. In fact, here they're saying the one, the only, the Oscars. What does it mean to worship? To treat someone or something with a reverence or adoration appropriate to a deity? Or number two, honor given to somebody in recognition of their merit. Isn't that what they do at the Oscars? Aren't they giving someone recognition of something because of their merits? And you know how many people, by definition, they're treating them like a deity. The Academy Awards, or the Oscars, is typically the second most watched show each year. Roughly 40 million people watch the Academy Awards each year. 40 million people. Do you know what the number one most watched show is? Super Bowl. The Super Bowl. You are correct. Almost 100 million people watch the Super Bowl. So, here we have a ceremony that happens that's the second most watched thing by people's eyes in the world. And by a worldly definition, it's basically a worship service. Now I'm going to show you a clip. Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart are presenting at what they call the Golden Globes. There's lots of these little different things, the Grammys, the Golden Globes, they honor television, Oscars honors film and movies. So Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart are going to tell you exactly what this little tiny golden idol is to them. Hey. Here, I'll start it over so you can hear.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next two presenters have done for fake news what the Fox News Channel has done for fake news. Please welcome Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Good evening, godless sodomites.
What are you doing?
I'm bringing the truth, John. We're in Hollywood, the belly of the beast.
You can't just read the prompter?
I'm reading the prompter in here. You can read that pablum.
Award show banter is not pablum. Reality television celebrates the human condition. By illuminating what's extraordinary in the ordinary person.
It warps the minds of our children and weakens the resolve of our allies.
The results are often dramatic and always unexpected. We're here to honor achievement in that category.
By giving you a golden idol to worship. Kneel before your God, Babylon!
Kneel before your God, Babylon. Interesting. So, making a joke, but there's a bit of truth to every joke. And do you think this is one isolated experience? Do you think this happens more than once at the Oscars?
We're going to run the unedited version.
What?
And be warned for you people, you may be offended, maybe. Watch.
Now look, a lot of people come up here and they thank Jesus for this award. I want you to know that no one had less to do with this award than Jesus. He didn't help me a bit. If it was up to him, Caesar Milan would be up here with that damn dog. So all I can say is, suck it, Jesus, this award is my God now!
And everybody's laughing. It's amazing. I mean, it's hard to even play those things and hear those things. Can you imagine? And this is the business that so many people support all the time. This is the mentality that's behind what we just see, let alone the things that are hidden in between the lines. Oscar. Anybody want to take a random guess what the word Oscar means? It's Scandinavian or Old English in its origin, and it means divine strength or divine spear. Is it possible that the devil is using these high-profile celebrities as godlike weapons against us? Divine, of course, is from like God. A spear, of course, is a weapon. Now here, does anybody recognize this building? It's a mosque. No. It's called the Shrine. It's where they held the Oscars until 1999. Okay? Now, the Shrine was founded by these two guys, Walter Fleming and William Florence, two Scottish Rite Freemasons, high-ranking 33rd degree Freemasons. This is where it's actually was all the way up till 1999, and they moved it to the Kodak Theater. In fact, Hollywood has long time been involved in Masonic secret societies, for those of you that aren't familiar with what Freemasonry is. It's basically different levels. There's 33 different levels. The first levels all the way kind of till you get up into the higher teens are actually really about helping your community and all sorts of things. They don't really tell you what's really going on until you get to the higher degrees. When they get to the 31st, 32nd, and 33rd degree in the book Morals and Dogma, they say, we are following Lucifer. So, some of these people like Gene Autry, John Wayne, these are all openly Masonic people that have come out and said, we are Freemasons. Also, in fact, Louis B. Meyer, Jack Warner, and Daryl Zanuck from 20th Century Fox, these guys are all high-ranking Freemasons. Now, I want to point something out to you. I don't want to go into a long explanation of, who the Freemasons are and go off on that much of a tangent, but right here, we have two very Masonic pictures. The one on the left is called the Masonic Sun Man. They incorporate lots of different elements of sun worship into their worship practices. And in fact, like sun being the head of man, that's kind of what that picture is relaying. And then also the picture on the right, your guys' on the right, is called a Masonic tracing board. What this picture is to people that are being initiated into Freemasonry is they want people to spot Freemasonry in the real world, so they hide certain Freemason symbols and things inside the pictures so that people that are initiated into the group will be able to pick them out. There's checkered floors, there's a sun beaming on, there's all kinds of different sun worship things that are involved in this. Now here's inside the shrine building. You can always tell a Freemason building because it has huge sun motifs in the building. This is actually the roof. Do you see the sun motif that's in the roof? In fact, if you look at it like in this picture, you can see it a little bit better. I want to show you the very last time that they ever had the Oscars in this building. I want you to pay attention to the stage.
And the Oscar goes to Roberto!
This is Italy's 26th nomination and its 10th Academy Award.
Okay, pause. This is a Masonic tracing board so that you will be able to spot Freemasonry. Checkered floor, archways, archways, sun motif in the top beaming down onto an altar. Look at this shot. Sun motif beaming down onto an altar. This is basically Freemasonry stamping this, saying we own this thing. Here's the Kodak Theater. Do you notice the checkered floor? Do you notice the archway? Do you notice the sun motif and the lighting system in the top? Once again, they are saying, we own this thing. This is actually the gate here that you go into the Kodak Theater. This is called the Gate of Ishtar. In fact, if you go to Hollywood and you go there, they'll hand you a little map right there, and it'll say, this is the gate to Babylon. This is the Babylonian court. This is Isis. This is Horus. This is all sun worship. And in fact, I used to, when I lived in Hollywood, I used to live right here in this building right here. So I watched this whole thing being built. Of course, I didn't know any of this until I started studying it later. But even the things that we watch, you don't recognize everything that's there. Where did sun worship start? Does anybody remember? Way back in Babylon. Remember the story of how Nimrod, when he died, he believed that, or everybody else believed that he went into the stars, and this is where we get our first recordings of star worship and sun worship and things, is from Nimrod back in Babylon. But you know what? It actually started before that. In Revelation 12:4, it says, and his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to earth. Whose tail drew a third part of the stars? Satan. So who are stars? Angels. The angels. So angels that are cast down to earth, called stars, are now fallen stars. Do we still worship the stars today? How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Thou art cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into the heaven, and I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. This idea of being more famous than God started with Lucifer. But now he's repackaged this and put it back into human form, because we have stars today that are still being worshipped. Basketball stars, football stars, baseball stars. People worship these people as if they are gods. Even Kermit the Frog gets his little star. He's not even real. So in 1 Timothy 4:1 it says, now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in later times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. You know, I was raised a very strict Seventh-day Adventist home. I read my Bible all the time when I was a kid. I've probably read the thing forwards and backwards a few times before I even got into high school. So how is it that when I left college and I got into the real world, how is it that I left everything so quickly? I got down to Hollywood within months. I stopped going to church. I stopped reading my Bible. I stopped talking to my family. And I got just deep involved in this world. How is that possible? How are celebrities so attractive that they attract the world to follow them? This might give you a little bit of insight behind the masks of the celebrities.
Was so electrifying that it came through.
words.
Do they possess a creative streak of genius that is unknown to most men, or unknown to most men are they in fact possessed?
Do you want me to start it over?
Is it possible that these actors
Yeah.
possessed by Holy Spirit to have a specific agenda?
You guys got to hear what's being said here.
And then turn the volume all the way up.
How are so many of Hollywood's most famous actors and actresses able to be so amazingly effective and convincing in their performances?
That guy was so electrifying that it came through the television.
How is it that they can move us to laughter, tears, or anger at the drop of a hat? Are they truly gifted with natural talent, as many suggest?
You see this and you're dazzled by their talent.
Do they possess a creative streak of genius that is unknown to most men, or unknown to most men are they in fact possessed? Is it possible that these actors and actresses are possessed by demonic spirits who have a specific agenda to fulfill? Oscar award-winning actor Denzel Washington told 60 Minutes exactly how he brings forth his best performances.
Basically what I did was got on my knees and sort of communicated with the spirits. And when I came out, I was in charge.
Powerful scene.
Powerful scene. I couldn't have acted that. I couldn't have written that down and made a decision to play that.
What, are you gonna smoke that?
Nope, you are.
Hell if I am.
Yeah. You're Jesus freak. You're Jesus freak.
The one-woman entertainment empire known as Oprah has strong affiliations with the demonic realm. The most familiar face on television says,
"You can not only use your body and physical self. This is how I see acting. I ask my body to be the carrier for the spirits of those who have come before me in a way that is most meaningful to the character. Just become the vehicle for that character."
calling out for these entities to take her over so that she may become a sparkling puppet, Oprah admits of her work before the camera.
I tried to empty myself and let the spirit inhabit me.
With her global influence, her shows have become a smorgasbord for the New Age agenda.
A lot of actors who don't mention their names, of course, are very much into this.
Magic only exists if you allow it, if you open yourself up to the possibility.
So that clip with Denzel Washington, he was talking about that movie Glory, and he was basically telling him that, he was asking him, how did you do such a brilliant job? Well, I got on my hands and knees and prayed to the spirits of the dead slaves. And what do we know about the state of the dead? If you are doing that, then those aren't souls coming into you from the past. It started a long, long time ago. Aleister Crowley, one of the most evil men in our 20th century, this guy was probably the tippy top of the occult world, if you will. He wanted to be Satan's right-hand man. And if you read into a lot of screenwriters where they got ideas from, a lot of people are into Aleister Crowley's writings. A lot of celebrities follow him. Music is written after him. V for Vendetta, the movie lines were taken directly from this guy's writings. In fact, the Beatles here, they have him on his album cover right here. So the Beatles were very, very influenced with him. This guy, Aleister Crowley, he started a place where you could basically do whatever you wanted to do, whether it be bestiality or whatever, and he called it the Abbey Road, and the Beatles named their album after that. So that's where they got the idea for Abbey Road. Anyway, Aleister Crowley wrote a book called Magic in Practice and Theory, where he outlined 3 of the best ways that you could become possessed by an evil spirit. And I find this very fascinating. One of the 3 good ways is there are 3 main methods of invoking a deity. The third method is the dramatic, perhaps the most attractive at all. Certainly it is so to the artist's temperament, for it appeals to their imagination through his aesthetic sense. So he's basically saying by acting is the best way to invite a spirit in. What does Socrates say on acting? In like manner, the muse, first of all, inspires men herself. The muse is that person that actors all believe that is the spark inside of them, because they are inspired and possessed. They are simply inspired to utter which the muse impels them. For not by art or by knowledge do you say what you say, but by possession. I find what he has to say here very interesting because in a weird, twisted way, he actually has a lot of truth to this. Think back when Christ cast out the demon out of the man, and the demon went out and he got 7 other demons and he came back. Okay? Think about, did that man ask for the demons to come in? Did they knock on his door and say, "Excuse me, can we come into your life?" No, they just came in. So basically, going off of what Socrates has to say, you can either be filled with God or filled with the devil. If you are not allowing the Holy Spirit and allowing God to come into your life and to fulfill that space, it is very easy for the devil to get in there and control what's going on. So yeah, it is by either possessing the Holy Spirit or possessing some other evil spirit that we all operate. But I want to go all the way back to Rudolph Valentino. He was, in the 1920s, so famous. This guy was the Brad Pitt of the day. All his movies were all about passion and about love. And this guy was so famous that when people would follow him around, they would basically start a riot. They would have to have police pushing people back. I mean, there were stories where he would throw his cigarettes on the ground and people would just dogpile and take it home and build a shrine out of it. Absolutely, completely famous, this guy. He got most of his movie script ideas from his wife, Natasha. And in a documentary about Natasha, it says every night Valentino's wife, Natasha, would hold a seance calling forth from the spirit world to help her in a creative undertaking. And then with her pencil and paper in hand, she would go into a trance and start writing. This is called automated writing. After her outpourings were typed out, they were brought to the set the very next day and given to the director. So this is the movies that Valentino was making. His wife would go in, have a seance, have an automated writing, channel the spirits through her, write them, go give them to the director, and those are what Valentino made him extremely famous. Almost overnight, what was considered sinful, which is sex outside of marriage, was starting to be redefined as popular, trendy, and even exciting. You see, in that time, and in the early 1900s, America was founded on very, very strong Christian values. So the devil has to start to unlock those Christian values. Well, of course, a little bit later, Mae West starts to hit the scene. Mae West was such a huge influence in the world and the way that men viewed their spouses or their partners, or even women for that matter. She started to completely change the ideas in people's heads that, you know what, you don't have to be married. And this is what Mae West had to contribute.
1930s, motion pictures were one of the mainstays of the Great Depression, and attendance to movie theaters skyrocketed.
Hello, folks. I wish you were up here at Mr. Gorman's beautiful theater to see the grand opening, the premiere of my new picture, I'm No Angel. Of course, I didn't call it I'm No Angel for nothing. Don't forget, come up and see me sometime.
Movie star Mae West was also known as the Queen of Sex and the Statue of Libido. Her work helped to topple the biblical sexual boundaries that were deeply embedded in the people of the early 20th century.
She can have a romance with somebody outside of wedlock.
I've got another man in my life.
It was pretty raw.
I don't know how many that makes.
It was pretty raunchy for that era.
Well, when I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
No star had greater impact in the long run than Mae West. Mae West was a one-woman sexual revolution.
So Mae West starts to open up the door to unlocking marriages and starting to have women go, you know what, I can have more than one partner. Here's what her psychic, Kenny Kingston, said about her. When she was upset that no one had been able to come up with a script idea, she had walked about her room saying, "Forces, forces, come to me, help me write a script." And when she would begin to hear voices and images, the plot was revealed to her. Mae would summon stenographers to work with her around the clock, and she would lie in bed in a trance-like state, dictating as the spirits entered. And if you look at Mae West's movies, it doesn't take a far stretch. Mae West, I'm No Angel, the sensational Mae West. I mean, these are things that are just very horrible things for this time period. And then Marilyn Monroe hits the scene. Marilyn Monroe, is there anybody in this room that does not know who Marilyn Monroe is? Really? Wow. Praise God. This is known on this planet right now as the most famous woman in our 19th century. More people know who this person is than you can possibly imagine. And that's the first time I've actually had in an audience people raise their hand and actually not know that are above the age of 10. So here's what Marilyn Monroe has to contribute to this.
7-year itch blew the lid off 1950s conservatism.
Hey, wait a minute!
It shocked audiences with its irreverent look at marital infidelity.
I mean, I wouldn't be lying on the floor in the middle of the night in some man's apartment drinking champagne if he wasn't married.
And showcased Marilyn Monroe in her most sexually suggestive role to date.
Let me just go put something on. I'll go into the kitchen and get dressed.
The kitchen?
Yes, when it's hot like this, you know what I do? I keep my undies in the icebox.
She was the sexual icon of her particular time and became, I think, the sex star of the century.
She could make you do anything in the world from that big screen.
That what has Marilyn Monroe got that a million other women have and prefer not to show?
Well, it's pretty vulgar if you ask me.
I have a message for your wife.
You can see those early signs of changing values.
I'd like to stay here with you tonight. I'd like to sleep here.
I think it's very nice, but I'd rather it were me.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Very nice, some girl.
Monroe attributed her ability to affect the public to other entities that would inhabit her and take her over. She was known for entering into deep trances before each scene. One of Monroe's close personal psychics recalled how she would draw attention from the spirit world, asking for their guidance.
When she saw a camera, any camera, she lit up and was totally different. The moment the shot was over, she fell back into her not very interesting position. And I don't know how to explain that.
Interesting. So here's somebody that was even in a account with her saying that she was completely different. All of a sudden you turn on the cameras and then you turn them off and she was just totally a different person, but involved in the spirit world. And if you have seen any documentaries about Marilyn Monroe, she was a tortured soul, tortured, lived a horrible life, and just completely unhappy. Here's what she says. She was quoted saying, "Jacqueline Hyde, more than two. I'm so many people sometimes they shock me. I wish it was just me." And if you look at some of Marilyn Monroe's movies, it doesn't take a far stretch to understand where these are coming from. It's dedicated to the new Marilyn Monroe doctrine. Let's make love. Don't bother to knock. A wicked sensation of the lonely girl in room 809. And today, we're so bombarded with sexual content that we don't even blink an eye. Original Sin, Zack and Miri make a porno, Sex Drive, it's all about losing your virginity. I mean, these things are just pumping at us at this crazy rate today. It's amazing that our kids are even growing up with somewhat of morals. I Love Lucy. What could possibly be wrong with I Love Lucy? I've seen every episode of I Love Lucy. I'm sure probably some of you in here could say the same thing. But here's how subtle the devil is. I really want to show you this. Let's look at I Love Lucy, or Lucille Ball rather. She became a television actress after the promptings of this woman, Carole Lombard. Okay? She was a major film actress at the time, and it was known as career suicide if she would come down to the little screen. Just people did not do that. But because actress Carole Lombard here, it was because of the spirit of actress Carole Lombard who guided Lucille Ball into taking a chance on television and accepting the offer to star in I Love Lucy. The glamorous comedian who had died in an airplane crash in 1942 appeared to Lucy in 1951. So what do we know about the state of the dead? And because Lucille Ball accepted the Spirit's urging to take a chance, honey, she made television history. Now I want you to think, what was I Love Lucy all about?
Hey, I'll tell him the truth. Don't you dare!
How many times did you hear that? Tell him the truth. Don't you dare. What it was basically a manipulative, lying woman who was constantly trying to deceive her husband and everybody else around her, wrapped in laughter. Wrapped in laughter, because laughter gets you in the door. And you see how it's coming from many different angles? You have the Marilyn Monroe type that are starting to unlock the sexual bonds between a man and a woman. Then you have things like this that are coming and unlocking just the honesty between everybody. Isn't it? Should be no question why we have such a divorce rate today. Because these are the things that everybody grew up on. In fact, today we have shows, we don't even hide the names anymore. Lie to Me. Jim Carrey, Liar, Liar. You know what Jim Carrey's Liar, Liar's movie was all about? Where he actually couldn't lie for a whole day. The whole movie was basically trying to say that given under certain circumstances, you should be able to lie. There is some chance out there, some way that a lie is actually okay. And that's basically what that movie was all about. There is a comic book writer named Alan Moore. He's written quite a few comic books. Watchmen just came out last year and was quite popular. V for Vendetta came out a couple of years ago. He's written some Supermans. He wrote From Hell that Johnny Depp was in. He wrote a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which Sean Connery was in. Alan Moore is a very open, he worships a god called Glycon, and he's very open about it, and it's a little snake god. And this is what he had to say about Glycon.
What's in it for you, though, following Glycon?
I believe that every single individual human being should probably make their own peace with the universe. I mean, we're all of us different emotionally, we're all different physically, intellectually. It would be really odd if we were all the same spiritually. So, I mean, that's why I have a problem with religion, per se, because religion, the very word, it comes from the same root word as ligature and ligament, and it means to be bound together in one belief, which I find a bit creepy and a bit unnatural.
You can't have that conversation with a Christian fundamentalist. Yeah.
The kind of what we call fundamentalism these days is basically entirely based upon 1930s tent show revivalism.
Right.
It goes back no further than about 80 years. And yet it's a very frightening and dangerous mindset because, I mean, as far as I understand it, at the moment, there are genuine worries that, certainly in America, that this could actually negate science, that it could drag us back into a new dark ages.
Yeah.
What? This is the guy who writes the story that everybody goes and watches. This is the mentality of the guy that's writing the words that are said. And if he's very open about his involvement in spirit worship, what does that say? And let me tell you, I don't know if a lot of people in here have gone and seen his movies, but I've spoken in enough Adventist schools and enough Adventist churches where I have asked the question, who here has seen one of his movies, and 3/4 of the room will raise their hand. So let me tell you, this does not mean that, we're not going and watching these movies. There's a lot of our brothers and sisters that are listening to this guy's thoughts, that Christianity is a dangerous mindset. Here's what he says. I decided I was going to become a magician. All of a sudden, a lightning bolt hit. It all got a bit strange, and for months after that, I was looking back, probably in some sort of borderline schizophrenic state. I found myself seemingly in conversation with an entity, his presence that surrounded my head, moving and speaking lucidly to me. I was very spaced out, God-struck. You babble for a while like an idiot. and I must have been unbearable for 2 or 3 months. I've now integrated that into the rest of my life. So that's how he started involving himself in spirit worship. And this man is one of the #1 biggest comic book writers out there. And he's got a list of movies that they're going to just continue to make. Alan Ball, he is the writer-director of a movie called American Beauty. I don't know if anybody has heard of this movie. He also did a series called 6 Feet Under. When he was asked by Amazon.com that the writing, it feels so cathartic, did it come quickly? Alan Ball says this: I got into the zone and it seemed to have a life of its own, and the characters seemed so real. It was like channeling. Peter Sellers, the guy who played Pink Panther, here's what he says about acting. It's rather like being a medium and laying yourself wide open and saying, I want a character to inhabit my body. I want a spirit to take charge of me so that I can produce what I hope to produce. Robin Williams told Us magazine when they asked him, how are you such a brilliant actor? This is what his response was. Yeah, literally, it's like possession. All of a sudden you're in and you get this energy that just starts going. But there's also that thing, it is possession. In the olden days, you would have been burned for it, but there's something empowering about it. I mean, it is a place where you are totally, it is a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where you can really become this other force. Director Taylor Hackford says this about Keanu Reeves from The Devil's Advocate. Keanu is a very complex guy with lots of demons in him. I was trying to tap in and utilize that. In fact, Keanu Reeves has come out and said that his acting is like taking demon rides. And he's actually been very open about that. Director Anisco Holland from Total Eclipse says this about Leonardo DiCaprio. Leo is like a medium. He opens his mind and body to receive messages coming from another person's life. Director Baz Luhrmann from Romeo and Juliet says, with Leo, you might see 30 people come out of him in a day. Johnny Depp says, I know I have demons. I'm 30 different people sometimes.
And also, I love the script. I love the whole idea of selling your soul to the devil. I'm kind of like, it's very intriguing to me.
I mean, have any of you seen any of these movies that these people are in? No. Awesome. These are very popular, famous actors and actresses saying these things in the real world. This is Jack Black at the MTV Music Awards.
Previous winners of Best Rock Video are some of the most exciting acts of all time. Green Day, Linkin Park, and of course, Aerosmith.
Yeah. Now listen, since we're giving a rock award tonight, who wants to pray to the devil with me? Who's in with me? Come on, hey, let me see those horns. Let me see those horns. Metal, 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 metal. All right. Now take the hand of the person next to you. Come on, Leighton. Dear Dark Lord Satan.
I'm going to pause it. I can't even show you this because I believe in the power of prayer. I don't even want you guys to hear a prayer to Satan. But I want you to know, look at all these people in the audience. They're all into this. And I don't want to say that, oh, there's not good people out there, there's not bad people out there. But these are the very popular movies and people. And if they're so willing to invite spirits into their lives, what kind of messages are they sending to us? What kind of messages are coming through the movies? And like we talked about yesterday, we are here to vindicate the character of God. Are we not? That is our purpose. We're still here because we, as a church, have not been able to perfectly reproduce Christ's character inside of the church so that the end will come. What does that mean? Why is there such a fight against our characters? We need to step away from these things that are just constantly putting out there evil thoughts, evil characters, and and things that don't build up the soul, rather tear it down. This is something that I fell prey to. I watched these people. I focused on them. When you spend so much time learning about somebody's life or learning about who they are, you're in essence really worshiping them. That's why if you learn about Christ, you learn about His character, you will take that on as yourself. Amen. The same thing goes on the other side of the flip coin. The more that we focus on the world, the more we become like the world. So these things that I've shown you tonight, I know that it just seems like, oh man, it must all be evil. It must all be bad. I really, really want you guys to know there are some few good things out there. But why do we always have to draw a line and walk up to the edge? Why do we have to see how close we have to get to the edge? This is a big, big time waster. It wastes hours and hours of your time. And even if it's about nothing, I mean, nature shows are great. I think, Planet Earth, those kind of things are great, but they always slide in there, the little evolution things. There's always a slight little chance. So how much longer are we going to be willing to take just a little bit of air? There's only a couple cuss words in it. There's only one sex scene. How many times are we going to be conditioned to basically say, you know what, I'm going to kind of just turn a little blind eye, but I'm still going to support what these guys are doing by watching their movies? Anton LaVey, the leader of the Church of the Satanic Church. This is one of the guys that started the Satanic Church. He started it off of Aleister Crowley's writings, but this is what he says about the television. The television is the mainstream infiltration to the new satanic religion. The TV set, or satanic family altar, which is ironic that he calls it this, has grown more elaborate since the early 1950s, from tiny little fuzzy screens to huge entertainment centers covering entire walls. What started as an innocent respite from everyday life has now become a replacement for millions, a major religion of the masses. Somebody from the other side is calling this what it is. How much more are we going to feed into this? And we need to, help our family members. I know that there's so many kids. I spoke to the academy this afternoon, and some of the questions that they had was, how are we going to go home and tell our parents this kind of stuff? Our parents are the ones that want to watch the movies. We all have brothers and sisters and various different people within our family. Here's the kind of things that are coming out of Hollywood, and I want you guys to really think about some of these issues that they're talking about. They're just so against what we're trying to build up.
Dun, 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 dun. Well, I come from 6 feet under with a dead guy on my knee. I'm heading down to Hades to spend eternity.
Even worse than you thought.
Well, what kind of crowd? He's not doing drugs, is he?
No. He's going to church.
Oh, God, no.
Who are you? I'm God.
I am God.
I am God. I am God.
If we listen, we can hear God's plan.
God's plan? All right, let me tell you about your God's plan. There is no God. There is no God.
God is in the rain.
You died for nothing. Who are you carrying all those bricks for, anyway? God? Is that it? God? Well, I tell you, let me give you a little inside information about God. He's an absentee landlord. Worship that? Never.
And these are just coming at you from all different angles, television shows, all kinds of movies. And whether or not You may not have seen that movie. Why go watch a movie that actor has done when he can even say these words out of his mouth? By just watching, we are feeding into this. There is a work to be done, brothers and sisters. There are so many people caught up in this, and we as a church need to be out there working harder. Everybody should be involved in some sort of ministry. It doesn't matter what you do. If you work at the local gas station, there's a ministry there to help people wake up, get away from this kind of stuff. Stop focusing on the television as what the world gets their information, and start focusing on eternal things. Amen. Deuteronomy 11:16. Be careful, or you will be enticed to turn away worship other gods and bow down to them. We must heed this warning also. Be careful. Just like the Israelites were standing on the edge of the promised land. They were all looking into this land that they had been promised. Their parents had been promised. Everybody had been promised. They knew what they had to do. And what happened right before they went in? Apostasy. The kings of the earth sent their worldly influences in, and that led many people away, and many people did not get to see the promised land. And Israel, if you really want to go back and study the Israelites coming out of Egypt and going into the promised land, man, there are so many neat parallels to what we are going through right now. I encourage all of you, go home, read that story. Read what Spirit of Prophecy has to say about that story. And really think about the implications of what it means. We are spiritual Israel standing on the edge of the promised land. Do not be enticed by other gods. Do not bow down by giving them our attention and setting our eyes on them. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, this is such a battle that has infiltrated into many people's homes. And Lord, I just pray that as we start to make an awareness of what's going on and what's being done, Lord, I ask that you protect the minds of the images that I've even shown here tonight. Lord, and I know that you have such a plan and a purpose for our church. You have such a plan and a purpose for each one of us, and I just ask that you place a special blessing upon Weimar, what they're doing. They're training kids to go out there and be soldiers for you. And Lord, I just praise your name for the things that you have done in my own life, waking me up, unplugging me from this distraction. And Lord, I just ask that you go and be with each and every person here today. Amen.